if you're taking notes, a majority of your notes are going to be at the very end, okay? So what I'd like you to do is just kind of saturate in the beginning part as we read through Acts 23. There'll be some things that you'll highlight that you'll see, but I'm going to spend 3 points teaching at the end after reading through the scripture. And mainly, the third point is the application point. So I'm not going to say, and here's the application. I'm just going to tell you point number 3, and we'll go through it together. As we pick up in Acts 23, we've got the Apostle Paul, who has gone to Jerusalem. As he's made his way there, his friends, his family, his colleagues, people have said, don't go, but he's known that's where I need to go. He's arrived in Jerusalem, he's met with the other disciples, and he sits with them and they go, hey, there's a lot of people who don't like you. If you go to the temple and if you cleanse yourself and you go through the spiritual rite, you'll demonstrate to all these haters that you still love God. So go do that. So the Apostle Paul goes and does that, and he goes through that process, but the haters, they what? They hate. And so they bring out all this anger, and they start accusing of him. And the truth is, they don't really have a good accusation. The only thing they can really do is just scream and yell and throw things and accuse him of stuff that's not true. And so it gets so bad that the Roman soldiers have to come in and grab him because there's a riot. They're like, what's going on? They pull him aside. And there's these people saying, he's doing these crazy things. And Paul goes, can I talk to him? And the Roman guard, whatever leader's like, sure, that makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't we let you talk to a rioting crowd that wants to kill you? And he talks with them, and he only makes them even more angry as he shares with them the testimony of his life. And he shares why he's doing what he's doing, and it angers them even more. And so the Roman soldier says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to pull you aside, and tomorrow we'll meet together, and we'll have all the accusers come in, and we'll let them bring their real charges against you. And we'll let them share with you what's going on. Now, before we jump into Acts 23, I just have a couple questions for you. You may not be at a spot where you can be really real with yourself, where you can be really real with others, or you can be really real with God. But I want you to think about this really quick. Has there ever been a moment when you lost your mind? Now, I'm talking lost your mind. Now, I have to admit, I have a guilty pleasure that I don't think I've told many people about this, and thank goodness this isn't going out any way publicly for anybody else to know this ever on a podcast or a video. So this will stay just in here. I know that. I know how quiet you guys will be about it. But when I was coming out to Chicago and I was flying on JetBlue, I got hooked on a television program. And by hooked on a television program, I mean I watch it like 6 or 7 times a year. So I'm not like some of you guys who are like hooked. That's hooked for me to watch a television program. But it's actually on MTV. And it's kind of sad that I'm confessing to you that there's a television show that I like that's on MTV, because they don't do any music videos anymore. It's just one trashy show after another for 24 hours. Some of you guys are upset that's your favorite channel. I'm sorry. But there's this show called Ridiculousness.
Yes.
And I love this show because on this show, people lose their ever-loving minds. And they do some of the dumbest stuff, like the girlfriend who wanted to get back at the boyfriend by ramming her car through his home. Because that made sense. That will really communicate, I'm angry, I'm upset with how you broke up with me. Now, on this show, there's countless other things that go on, but there's moments in time where we just lose our mind. I was driving here, and my daughter and I were talking about this sermon, and she goes, yeah, it's kind of like the Incredible Hulk, Dad. And I'm like, are you doing my intro for me? Maybe I should listen. And she goes, yeah, it's like, you know, he when he gets angry, he turns green and he just explodes and he goes nuts. And I'm like, okay. She goes, and I love this one part in the movie where they look at the Incredible Hulk and they say, we need you to get angry. And he turns and looks at the person and says, you don't understand. I'm always angry. Some of us are like the Incredible Hulk. We're always angry. We may not be green. We may not be puffy. We may not throw cars around. We may not be losing our ever-loving minds, but we are one statement. We are one moment. We are one choice away from absolutely losing it. In 2001, brand new parents, so parents listen up. You get to hear some of my amazing parenting stories for you of how not to parent. My wife and I, sleep deprived, had a daughter who will remain nameless. And she was at the point where she could stand on the crib and she could stare into the video monitor that you could see, and she looked like she was possessed. Right? That little face looking right in. Some of your parents know what I'm talking about. They're like, I know you can see me. I know. But the difference was she wasn't a quiet child. She was screaming her head off. Did she need her diaper changed? No. Did she need food? No. Did she just wanted not to be alone, and she wanted her parents with her. Well, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but as parents do, they look at each other and they stare in bed as a child's screaming and go, no, you go, no, you go, no, you go, no, you go. I went, you went, okay. So we go through this, and so finally I lost in Rochambeau, and I think she had rock and I had scissors, and so I had to go. And I walked into the room, and I am furious. Nothing we have done has worked for this child, and she is screaming. And at that moment, I picked up my daughter, and I said, and I stopped. And I realized I was shaking my child. Before that, I had watched those videos about shaken baby syndrome, and I'm like, that could never be me because I'm arrogant and I'm cocky and conceited. But in that moment, when I said, I set her back down, let go, and walked away and went into the living room and sat down and realized if I spoke, if I touched anything, if I did anything, it was not going to go well for me or for anybody else. Now, some of you guys have been there. And some of you have the maturity to sit down on the couch, but some of you guys don't have the maturity. You engage, and you still go for it because you have not learned your lesson yet. My wife came out of the bedroom furious. And don't get me wrong, we're all angry. This house is not going well. And she comes out and she's like, I thought you were supposed to go take care of the kid. She's still screaming. I have another opportunity to make a very terrible choice in my life. Sometimes in life you are going to be given a bad choice and an even worse choice. And sometimes it's best not to choose either and still have somebody angry at you. I looked at my wife, I didn't say anything, I didn't get up, and I didn't move. Was she furious with me? Yes. Was she right to be angry at me? Yes. Was it intelligent for me to engage? No. Sometimes we absolutely lose it. Why? Why do we lose it? Well, because a lot of us have anger that's just boiling inside of us, and today we're going to deal with that. We're going to talk about it. In Acts 23, I want you to see all the anger that is in Acts 23. I want you to pay attention to all of these people who are just upset at Paul and they're losing their minds over what Paul is doing. Look at how they act. Look at how they respond. Look at how they hold back their feelings. No, they don't, okay? So jumping into Acts 23, I'm just going to read to the end, and then we'll go through the points. In Acts 23, it says this in verse 1. And looking intently at the council's been brought in. They're standing before the Roman soldiers. And Paul says, brothers, I have lived my life before God in all good conscience to this day. Excuse me. And the high priest Ananias, those who stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Let's just pause there for a second. The high priest, the godly person, says, yeah, use violence. That would be wise. And then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you sitting to judge me according to the law? And yet, contrary to the law, you order me to be struck. Okay, so what this high priest is saying is you're breaking the law, and the way I'm going to tell you that you're breaking the law is I'm going to break the law. And Paul's like, really? But sometimes, as humans, we do that. We say, but they did this, that's why I can do this. And that's never the case. And so Paul lets him have it even more. It says, those who stood by him said, would you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest. For it was written, you shall not speak evil of your ruler, of your people. In other words, what Paul is saying is, I didn't realize by his actions he was the high priest. He's not acting like the high priest. And if he was acting like the high priest, I probably would treat him like the high priest. But he's not acting like it. Verse 6. Now when Paul had perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out to the council, brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. It is with respect to the hope of the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial. Now, there's one group that believes that there will be bodily resurrection after death, and there's one group that believes, nope, there's not bodily resurrection after death. And Paul basically highlights the dissension and the argument between these two parties and these two groups. And look how well they handle it. Verse 7. And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. A dissension. And the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say that there's no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit. But the Pharisees acknowledge them all. We still have this same thing going on in Christianity today. There are some people that believe the Holy Spirit absolutely is involved in that work, and there's miracles that happen, and there's a group of people that believe they don't happen. There's a group of people that believe that God can speak to you and he still speaks, and there's a group of people that say God will never speak again. He's written the scriptures. Why would he write the scriptures then have something else to say? There's still dissension in the church. Okay? Verse 9, then a great clamor arose. I love that word, clamor. Who uses that word anymore? Okay? A clamor arose. And some of the scribes and the Pharisees stood up and contended gently. Right? When you have the word contended, is there ever the word gently next to it? No, they contended sharply. Have you been in a conversation where you contended sharply? Where you were aggressive? Where you were forceful? Where you were biting? Where your words were meant to maim and injure and stab? Absolutely, you've been in that conversation. And they say, we find nothing wrong with this man. What if a spirit or an angel spoke to him? And when the dissension became violent, okay, the tribune, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them, that's pretty violent, okay, commanded the soldiers to go back and down and take him away from among them and force and bring him into the barracks. Then we switch in the story to verse 11. The following night, the Lord, this is Jesus. Some of you guys have a Bible and you have red letters, okay? Most of you, when you read through Scripture, when there are red letters, these are the words of Jesus. Right here in the book of Acts, these are red letters. These are the words of Jesus. Jesus stood by him and said, take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome. Now, let's just stop for a moment. Does anybody feel like Paul's done a great job in Jerusalem testifying? No, right? It seems like he's failed. It seems like he's absolutely not done a good job. But Jesus says, for as you've testified in Jerusalem, now you're going to go testify in Rome. Sometimes we got to reframe success. We can't decide what touching the white fence will look like I preached last week about completing the mission and doing what God says. Oh, well, if I touch the white fence, then clearly there will be a band there to greet me and people will be excited and they'll shoot confetti. No, we can't decide what the outcome will be. We have to be obedient to what the mission is. And if we were sent to Jerusalem and God told us to testify about him in Jerusalem and we did everything that Paul did, and we got accused of lies, and we got jailed, and we almost got beaten to the point of our lives, don't you feel like each one of us in here would feel like a failure? Right? I would feel like a failure. I'm sure one of you in here, if I was a leader, would be in my face, frothing at the mouth in anger of how did you mess up leading us here? God just told us to come to Jerusalem. He didn't say how it was going to look or what it was going to do. He just told us to come and just told us to testify. We've come and we've testified. But anger comes out, doesn't it? You want to see a group of angry people, just go to Disneyland in the summer. Have you ever been there? Have you ever seen the father who's just spent $3,000 to have fun look at his family who's exhausted and tired at 4 o'clock and said, you will enjoy every last hour and minute of this. We will get all of our money's worth. And then turn and look at the wife. They should have divorce counseling in Disneyland. Like, it's in the lines. They should have it. Verse 12. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. Way to go, religious people. Way to go. Way to apply all the scriptures incorrectly, completely. The Jews bound themselves. They made an oath. Not a good move. And not only did they make an oath, they made an oath neither to eat nor drink, which is usually a holy practice, until they had done something incredibly unholy to Paul. They killed him. There's massive problems in this group. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. Now, let me let you guys know this. I don't think they followed through. Here's how I know. Paul doesn't die for 7 years. But they made this huge holy oath that somehow they were going to be greater than God, and they missed it. They didn't go to God and say, God, what are you up to? God, what are you doing? What they did was they looked at their circumstances, they looked at their lives, they looked at the anger of the people, and they came up with their own solution, and then they tried to make it holy. Bad move. They bind themselves in this. Now, let's stop for a second. Paul doesn't die for another 7 years, but Paul has been doing this missionary journey for 23 years. 23 years he's been at this. Now, some of you guys are thinking, oh, I don't know if I could go 23 years like that. Now some of you are thinking with me, nah, I can't go 23 years like that. I mean, this dude is amazing. Okay? In verse 13, it says there's more than 40. In verse 14, they went to the chief priests and the elders. Don't you think this should be the fail-safe? Don't you think this is where you want your religious leaders to go? That's a bad idea. Don't do it. Okay? It says, we have strictly bound ourselves by oath not to taste food until we have killed Paul. Now, therefore, along with the council, give notice to the tribune to bring him down to you as though you were going to determine his case more exactly. And we are ready to kill him before he comes near. This is when religious people go bad. This process already happened with Jesus 40 years previous, right? In the process. They made an oath that they were going to kill him because he was a threat. These people are losing their minds. The religious leaders are losing their minds. They're jaded. They're not seeing things clearly. And that reminds me of a story for me. Years ago, Andrea, at that point in time, Armstrong, and Danielle Brown somehow convinced me to take scuba diving lessons. And no, it's not joyful at all. It's the worst experience of my life. I have sinus problems, and I've learned things that when you go 13 feet underwater, your head hurts more than it did at 12 feet, and even more than it did at 11, and even more than it did, and it just hurts more as you go further down into the ocean. But being a trooper, I decided I would do this, and so we took a trip to an island called Catalina Island, which is connected here to Chicago because Mr. Wrigley, who has the Wrigley building, who used to own Wrigley Field and the Cubs and everything else, used to own the whole island of Catalina off the coast of Los Angeles. And he actually would have the Cubs do their spring training on Catalina. It's a little connection between Chicago and Catalina Island. Well, we went there and we did a shore dive where there's this point and you go off the point and you dive in this really murky water and you just totally love and enjoy all of it. And I'm not doing a really good job advertising scuba diving, I know. But one of the weird things is when you get down underwater and you get to neutral buoyancy, and if you really do it really, 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 really well, and it's dark, you don't know what way's up, what way's down, what way's left, and what way's right. You don't know. Like, you don't know where you are. And there was this one spot where it got really murky, And I don't know why we were swimming through all these just massive seaweed gardens. And I see Andrea go up because she apparently needs air. And I see Danielle go up after her because she wants to go with her. You can ask Andrea and Danielle that story. But anyways, I start to get in this area. And now I'm by myself and it's dark. I've lost my scuba buddy. It's dark and I don't know what direction's what. That's what anger's like. Anger makes you lose your bearings. And one of the things in scuba diving that you can figure out really quick that never loses its bearings are bubbles. And so if you just go and you watch which direction the bubbles go, oh, that's up. I'll go that direction. These people needed to recognize they had lost their compass and they were not making good decisions. The people who bound themselves and the religious leaders, but that's not what they do. They stick with being confused and lost. In verse 16, it says, now the son of Paul's sister had heard about their ambush, and he goes in and he tells the story and he goes through the process and he tells Paul what's going on. He goes to the tribune and Paul says, you need to go and tell the tribune about this. And so the boy goes and tells the tribune and communicates it. And then the tribune in verse 22 says, look, don't tell anybody else about this kid. We're going to take care of it. We pick it up in 23. It says, he called 2 centurions and said, get ready 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen and go as far as Caesarea in the 3rd hour of the night. In other words, get out of here in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning. No one will know. Okay? And I will send you along with the letter. He says, I'll also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix the governor. In 26, Claudius Lucilius, to his excellency, the governor Felix, greetings. This is the letter. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them when I came upon him, and the soldiers rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen. And desiring to know the charge they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council, and I found that this man was being accused about a question of their law, but charged with nothing deserving death or imprisonment. Does it sound like the Roman leader has a clear head? Yes. Okay? And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against this man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers also to state before you what they have against him. 31. So the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And there the next day they returned to the barracks, letting the horsemen go on with him. And when they had come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from. And when we learned that he was from Caesarea, he said, I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive. And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's Paratronium. Whatever you want to do that one. It's like a Harry Potter word. It's pretty cool. Basically, it's a palace, and it's gorgeous. So let's talk about what's going on. All of us in different ways are going to run into anger. Okay? One of the fun things for this that happens when you preach is the sermon has to go in you and come through you. I had so many opportunities to get angry this week. It was ridiculous. Mainly sitting underneath my IKEA trying to work on it. Yeah, it's just a whole other story. I'm going to get angry while I'm preaching. I'm going to take an oath against my car. Just checking to see if you're paying attention. All right. If you're taking notes, I want you guys to start writing this down. And this is where you're going to get really engaged. Shay, when you put up the notes, if you'll just put up point 1 and all of them at the same time. Point number 1 is this. Anger messes you and me up. Anger messes me up. If you let anger hang out with you and spend time with you, it will devour and destroy you. Anger is not your friend. Anger is not your help. Anger is like alcohol. It makes you puff up into something bigger than you really are, and it gives you fake confidence to do things you shouldn't do. Okay? Anger does a bunch of things. It clouds your judgment. Can we see in this chapter that many people's judgment was clouded? That the religious leaders, when the guys came in and said, hey, we've taken this spiritual oath to kill this guy, and we're going to make it religious, and we're not going to eat or drink, and we want your blessing, that at that point in time, the religious leaders should have said, that's a bad idea. Clouds judgment. It taints input. When you're angry, it doesn't matter what someone says. You're angry at what they're saying. If you've been in that conversation with your spouse says, I love you, and you go, why would you say that? Because you're tainted. You're in trouble. Okay? Anger sets you against. People who should be your friends become not your friends. People that are on your team, you don't see them as on your team. Anger destroys a team. It puts you into fight or flight. Some of you, you're flighters. Once anger hits, you bury, you run, you hide. And some of you guys, when anger hits, you come out swinging like an angry bear. Anger causes you to react in bad ways. Anger causes you to make mess. You say things like, hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. No, you're not fine. You're lying to yourself. Anger causes you to give the cold shoulder to people. Have you seen people who give the cold shoulder? Have you seen that? Okay? People who think that, like if I just all of a sudden go back to kindergarten, you're going to know that I'm angry at you and that's going to get you. Or maybe there are people that just completely ignore you and won't even respond to you. It's not even a cold shoulder. You're standing there and they're acting like you're not even there. Again, anger causes people to lose their minds. You're standing there. It's obvious you're standing there. Okay? And then F. Anger distracts you until it consumes you. And that's anger's goal in your life. Anger's goal is to buddy up next to you and make you think like you need it. Anger's goal is to make you feel powerful and strong and warm and courageous while you're there. But the problem is there's a moment with anger that it flips and it turns into a horrible poison. It would be like comparing an anger moment to a rattlesnake biting your skin. When a rattlesnake bites your skin, its venom goes into your skin and immediately causes your cells to start breaking down and falling apart and just basically turning into water. Anger does the same thing inside of our souls. When anger gets in, bites and hits us, boom, it's in us. And we've got to recognize we're in some serious trouble. Now, let's talk about point number 2. How does anger get in? Okay, point number 1 is anger messes me up. Point number 2 is anger comes from within me. Anger doesn't come from the outside. These people who were angry at Paul were already previously angry at something else. They just directed their anger at Paul. The people who decided to take an oath were already angry people who were willing to ignore the entirety of the law to take an oath that they then think it would be brilliant to go to the religious leaders to tell them there's problems. The religious leaders are angry. That's why they couldn't say no. So anger comes from within me. A lot of times anger is learned and it comes from family history. You may have had an angry mother or an angry father. You may have had an angry aunt or an angry uncle or an angry grandma or an angry grandpa. You may have had an angry sibling. And what I want you guys to understand is anger leaks onto people. It infects. It totally destroys and pollutes relationships. But a lot of times, if you had an angry parent, you've learned how to be angry. Okay? I had an uncle, he passed away. I was just at a family reunion. I can't even tell you the words publicly the way my uncle talked to people. He was a great uncle. My great uncle was an angry man. I don't know if he ever said a kind word to any of his children. Now, those children seem very loving. They've just gone the opposite way, but they're damaged. Did they love their dad? Yeah. Was their dad horrible to them? Yeah. Did they learn how to be angry people? Yes. And some of you guys in your family history, you have it. And I want parents, think about this for a moment. Do you want to pass on that history to your kids? I hope not. Hopefully it stops with you. Hopefully you decide my kids won't have to deal with that. Anger comes from feeling injustice. Sometimes there are things that happen in our life and we feel like an injustice was done to us and we are angry. A lot of times, I know it sounds petty, but if you got a sibling, you feel like your brother got something better than you did. You feel like your parents loved your sister more than they loved you. You felt like there was an injustice and you are angry because justice wasn't carried out. And you carry that inside of you. Maybe you're like me. This is one of the areas that anger gets me, impatience. I'm thinking, man, this sermon should already be done. And I'm angry that it's not. I get impatient. Do you guys get impatient? I get impatient. One of the things years ago God told me that I had to do as a spiritual discipline, oh, I hate this thing when he does it to me, is I have to go to the grocery store and pick the longest line. I'm the person who goes to the grocery store and I look at the people who are at the clerk checkout and I look for the most socially awkward person who won't talk to anybody and I know we'll get through faster. And I'll go to that person. So you guys are laughing. You know it's true. Okay, I don't want the Target lady that SNL makes fun of. Oh, where'd you get this from? Oh my gosh! I don't want to talk. I want to swipe my card. Come on, because this is important stuff I bought at Target. I need to go outside and enjoy it. Come on. I'm impatient. Some of you guys are impatient. There's something that God has told you he wants to do in your life. And I want to let you guys know this. God moves slowly. God moves slowly. God moves slowly. Some of you guys have been called to do things and you think, okay, I'll go do it now. Unless God says do it now, it's probably going to go slowly. Just want to let you know that. Just like 99% of the time, God's going to move slowly unless he says now. Okay? Abuse. Some of you guys have been abused. I am so sorry. That abuse creates inside of you a brokenness and a hurt and a damage. And that hurt and that damage can manifest in anger and in outbursts and slamming other people and attacking. But that's inside. Abuse can happen. And sometimes people perceive they're abused and they're not. And they can still respond the same way. Unmet needs. Some of us came up in poverty. Some of us came up without a mom, or some of us came up without a dad. Some of us came through the process of things that we felt like we had a need and we wanted it, and it didn't get taken care of. And we're angry. And then the ultimate one, jealousy. Comparing what you have against what somebody else has. Jealousy will eat you alive. You know that somebody will always have more than you. Another one of my shows that I like to watch is on CNBC, and it's The Secret Lives of the Super Rich. Well, I noticed a pattern on The Secret Lives of the Super Rich. They're constantly selling what they just bought to get something bigger. When I saw that Celine Dion had sold her Miami home that was like 7 states worth of land with its own water park on the ocean, for like $1 bazillion because she needed a bigger home, I was like, oh wow. So what I want you to understand is if you're somebody who's a jealous person, I want you to hear this. You're never going to be happy. Because you will always find somebody else that has more than you, and you will be upset that they have it, and you will decide deep inside of you that you deserve it. Do you see it? Do you see how anger just comes in and it works in us? So if anger messes us up, and if anger comes from within, what do we do with anger? So here's the application, okay? Now, this is not something that you're going to read and be like, oh, it's fixed. No. Anger is a foe you will fight your whole life. But you have to understand how to fight it. Okay, so let's talk about this. Point number 3 is I need help to get rid of my anger. Okay? Ephesians 4:31 tells us to get rid of our anger. But I want you to understand this. If you try to do it on your own, it's not going to work. There are many things that you need to understand that you need to do. Okay? Number 1, you need help to face the pain. Most of us aren't dealing with our anger, and I want to let you know. Some of you guys are thinking, oh my gosh, Pastor Nathan's preaching the sermon just at me. No, this whole sermon is for Chicago. This whole sermon is for America. Did you guys not see what was in the news this last week? We had a world that went ape crazy over a gorilla being killed in Cincinnati, over a child. Did you notice that Johnny Depp's wife is filing against him for divorce because when he's angry, he gets drunk and he beats her? Do you guys notice that 700 refugees drowned off the coast of Greece from Syria and it didn't reach the news? Did you guys notice that in Texas there's massive floods and people driving trucks don't realize trucks don't go through running water and they get taken over into the river and they die? And people ask, why? Do you see all the anger? In Chicago last week on Memorial Day weekend, what was it, 69 shootings and 9 deaths? So I want you guys to understand, anger is an epidemic. This sermon is not about you. This sermon is about our city. This sermon is about your neighbors. This sermon is about our friends, our family, our colleagues. And we need help to face the pain. But a lot of us don't want to face the pain. What we do is we get critical and we attack others. If you find that incredibly critical person and you find someone that is incredibly lashing out, they are avoiding dealing with their deep pain. And the way they distract themselves is by finding other people and attacking them. And they're very difficult to get them to slow down and for them to look and face their pain. Now, I want you to understand this. There's pain to the left and there's pain to the right. So when you're angry, there's pain. You either face the pain well or you face the pain wrong. But you need help facing the pain. B, I need help to kill anger at the root. Now, a lot of times, the branches, the leaves, malice, jealousy, frustration, insecurity, fear, worry, hate, those are all out on the branches and on the leaves of the tree. But when you start to come down to the trunk and you start to get down into the root, when you start to get down into the earth, you find out that that person feels neglected by their father. And that's why they're angry. When you get into the roots, you find out that that person hoped that Santa Claus would come on Christmas and Santa never came. And they're upset. When you get down in the roots, you find out that people are upset because they were always treated the same as their brother and sister and they were never treated differently. You get down in the roots, you find out that someone got upset because they were treated differently and they weren't treated the same. Everybody's pain is unique, but it is down in the roots of your life. And I want you guys to hear this. God doesn't waste pain. When pain hits your life, He wants to dive deep and there's something He wants to kill. And the truth is, He wants to kill you because some of us have made anger part of our lives. We cherish it. It's us. We carry it around. It's who we are. And God says, I want to kill that. And we say, God, you want to kill me? Ooh. And God says, don't identify with that. That is not you. That is not who I made you. And yes, that must die. And then we go, ooh, I hate you, God. And we get angry with God because we don't want to deal with it. We've got to kill it at the root. We've got to get help to face it. I recommend counseling. I recommend therapy. Guys, I have gone to more counseling. I have gone to more therapy. I have gone to more marriage counseling. I have gone to more spiritual direction. I have gone to more spiritual formation because I have realized if left to myself, I can't kill the root on my own. And I am a highly motivated person who can dive deep down into my soul and find stuff. And I'm telling you, if I struggle doing it, you're going to struggle doing it. And you've got to have loving people who will sit with you, who will dive into the depths and ask you tough questions that make you wrestle, that frustrate you even more. One of the therapists asked me this simple question, Nathan, why do you do that? I don't want to think about why I do that. I just do it. The therapist was like, well, why? Why, when you get bumped, do you respond like that? I'm like, I don't know. I've always responded that way. He's like, why have you always responded that way? And I'm like, do you always ask questions? And he says, yes, I'm a therapist. Some of you guys, when people start asking you questions, They are the ways of moving dirt off of the roots. And if you can sit in the questions, if you can search your soul, if you can start to ask why. And for me, my biggest issue was I was the youngest in my house of 4 leaders, and I felt, doesn't mean it was true, key words. I felt like I wasn't listened to. And because I felt like I wasn't listened to, I was going to make sure people were going to listen to me. Just want to let you guys know that is great for relational development. It doesn't. I felt insecure. I felt like people were challenging what I had to say. So I would give more information and bulldoze people. Why do you do that? Because I'm insecure. Why are you insecure? Well, because I feel like someone's going to show up one day and tell me, hey, Nathan, we know you're all lying, and we've got the real replacement. They're here, and they actually know what they're doing, so come on in. The therapist said, Nathan, none of us know what we're doing. We're all making it up. Well, that's helpful. And did you just make that up, or did you know that? So that's another joke for you to put that rattle around. C, I need to replace it. You can't get rid of anger unless you replace it with something else. If you create the void and you push away anger and you leave a gap, it's going to fill back in. I'm going to give you the antidote. I'm going to give you the antidote to anger, and it is so hard to do. I'm not going to lie. It's going to look really easy on the screen. It is so hard to do. Okay? The anger antidote is this: express gratitude. If you can focus on all the things that you're so thankful for and give gratitude to all the people, then you're going to have a much better day, and you're going to weaken anger, you're going to dilute it, and you're going to get rid of it. When you walk outside and it's raining, think, oh, plants and trees are going to grow. When the snows hit in winter and it's freezing cold, think, oh, the tulips are getting ready to come up. But if you walk outside and you go, the world hates me, it's cold. Do you realize how arrogant you are to think that the world really cares that much about you? Think about that for a moment. Some of the statements we make, oh, the whole school's against me. The whole school doesn't even know your name. They're not against you. Every time my boss just tries to destroy my ideas, your boss doesn't know your name either. Doesn't even know it was your idea. You're not that important. Just be thankful you have a job. Be thankful you get to ride CTA. Be thankful that there are streets. Be thankful that there are police. Be thankful. Just show gratitude that you're married. Okay? Be thankful that you have children and they're breathing. I mean, there's so many things you can focus on, but you've got to express gratitude and you've got to express thankfulness. And some of us struggle saying, thank you. We do things like this. Well, you know. You know how I feel. I don't have to say how I feel because you know. You know. And then if we're dudes, we just do this. Right? Just think how shallow you are as a person that you can't say thank you. Yeah, that was pretty harsh. I know. But let me just jump in there. Think how shallow you are that you can't say thank you. Realize that you're using your anger for power and for control, for strength. And if you say thank you, it will weaken you. And you know it. That's why you don't do it. This antidote will weaken it. Be thankful. Thank your children for cleaning their room barely. Okay? Thank your spouse for coming home because they could have just driven on the freeway and gone all the way to Maine. Right? Be thankful for what's around you. 3, restructure your thinking. Some of you guys, and some of you guys who've been with me, you know this term. I stole it from Dr. Phil because I saw it on Oprah. Stinking thinking, right? What you got going on there is stinking thinking. I'm like, dang, Dr. Phil, you're good. Stinking thinking is this. It's a spiral thought process that brings you down and destroys you. How often do you fall into that in a day? How often do you fall into stinking thinking in an hour? How often do you fall into it in a month or in a year? You've got to work hard on looking on the bright side of life. Right? Who knows that song? You just whistled at the very end of it. Okay? Monty Python friends, there you go. Okay? But you've got to look for the bright side. You've got to break out of that thinking pattern. You've got to get away from thinking that everybody's against you and people are trying to destroy you. You've got to start thinking that people are for you and they love you. You've got to start thinking that God cares for you and he's protecting you. You've got to start realizing, oh, darn it, I'm a spiritual teenager and I'm causing heck in my God's house. But I have rights, God. You've got to be able to grab onto that. You've got to restructure your thinking, and you have to fight to do this. 3 years ago, I had to fight and do this. It took me 10 months of getting this back in place. So much so to the point, some of you guys, I'll frustrate you because you're around me and you start leading me back into temptation. And I'm like, no, I'm thankful that the sun came up this morning. And you guys are like, what in the world was that? I'm thankful that you're standing here. I'm thankful that there's a building over us. I'm thankful that there's ground. I'm wearing shoes. I'm thankful I'm wearing shoes. And some of you guys are like, you are crazy. And I'm like, I'm not going to be angry like you ever again. I like my pants. Okay? 4, this one's hard. Look closely at your anger patterns. Notice when you blow up. Notice when you lose it. And catch it before you do it. Spouses, stop saying mean things to the person who loves you the most and cares for you the most on this earth. Just because you're insecure and you can't say mean things to everybody else because you're afraid of losing your job does not give you the right to berate and destroy the person you know that's not going to leave you. Do you realize that? Do you realize we're the meanest to the people we feel the safest with? And we're the nicest to the people who don't help us at all? Isn't that messed up? So, I know this is really bad application, but just for a moment, switch it. Be nice to the people who love you and be mean to the people who don't care, right? As a spouse, I'm like, I vote for that. I vote for that because it's not going to matter. Because you being nice to them is not mattering. That's not helping. So at least be nice and loving to the people who love you. Okay, but look closely at your anger patterns. Notice when the heat starts to come up the back of your neck. Notice when your heart starts to pick up. Notice when your eyesight starts to narrow and you start to focus in on what you're about to eat. Notice when your hands get a little bit sweaty. Notice when your stomach starts to turn. Start paying attention to the warning lights that your body gives out. You guys realize that? Most of you guys drive a car. When you drive a car has the lights that say, hey, check your engine. Your body is saying, hey, shut up. Hey, sit down. Hey, stop doing this. Now, why do we struggle with this? Three lies we keep telling ourselves why we won't dive into the solve. Lie number 1, the offense is too great to let it go. The offense is too great. I can't let that go. I just can't let that go. 2, they'll get away with it. Have you ever said that statement? You're like, they'll get away with it. What they did was wrong and they need to be punished and I'm going to be the one who's going to enforce it. And then 3, my anger towards them will make them feel pain. That's one of the biggest lies. One of the biggest lies that people do is they hold anger and they think, if I hold it long enough, it'll hurt that person. I hate to tell you this, but 100% of the people who ingest poison never give it to anybody else. It's in them. Okay? These lies we've got to kill. So let me jump through basically 9 verses really fast. 2 Timothy 4:5 says this. It tells us to be calm, cool, collected, and do what we're called to do. So if you need to look up 2 Timothy 4:5, it's going to help you start putting the truth back into you. 1 Peter 5:8 tells us to be self-controlled. Romans 12:21 tells us to overcome evil with good. Ecclesiastes 7:9 says fools keep anger close to their chests. Fools keep anger right here. Romans 12:19 says trust God and let him have vengeance. Ephesians 4:26 says be angry but don't sin. Proverbs 14:9 says be slow to wrath. 16:32 says be slow to anger. And Proverbs 19:11 says the wise overlook an offense. Now, about 5 years ago, I was sitting in a therapist's office, and this therapist charged almost $300 for 45 minutes of meeting with him. Now, I didn't pay for it, so don't judge me. I thought it was way too much money. But this therapist got a lot of money for me being there. I got sent to this therapist because I had responded to suicides, I had responded to deaths, I had been around massive amounts of difficulty, and I was starting to struggle. And that's what happens to first responders. First responders who are around trauma again and again and again and again and again suddenly start to break down. And as I was with this therapist and I was talking with this therapist about the 5th session said, Nathan, I want to save you a lot of money. And I just stopped and I looked at the therapist and said, what? And I want to pass on you guys the wisdom that this therapist gave me. This is something that should rattle around in your head for a long time. This is somebody who made more money than I will ever make, telling me you don't need to give me your money anymore, Nathan. Let me tell you what you need to think about. And this is what the therapist said to me. He said, what power does that person have over you to really make you angry? What power does that person really have over you to make you angry? So Nathan, if you can answer this question, you are going to save so much money on therapy. Because you can ask this question in almost every area of your life. What power does this disease really have over me? I love Jim Valvano when he said, cancer can attack my body, but it can never attack my mind and my attitude and my spirit. He chose not to let it get him. And many of us need to start to figure out that power isn't really there. You actually give it power. More importantly, you and I actually create it, and it's false power. Let's pray. God, we ask you to help us. God, we ask you to help our city. God, our streets are angry. Our politicians are angry. Our school teachers are angry. Our policemen are angry. God, our churches are angry. There's so much anger that's going on around us, God. We need your help. Help us, mighty God, to change the way we look at things. Help us, mighty God, to be grateful, to be thankful. God, to get the anti-venom inside of us to get rid of anger. So that, God, we don't do stupid stuff like we saw in Scripture. We love you, God. We look forward to your help. Amen.